Welcome to Good Discussion Posts in an Academic Context with Mrs. Young. Today we will discuss the things that you need to know in order to successfully respond to discussion threads in the 7th grade American History course. This is a super important skill for many reasons that we're going to go over today. So why are we doing this? Well, this is a skill that is going to be able to translate to all disciplines, meaning history, English, math, economics, science, whatever it may be. And you will at some point in your academic career, especially when you're in college, have to take an online only course. So this is going to be the primary way that you communicate with your peers and with instructors. I once had a class at Drexel University where I had to work with somebody who was in a completely different country and on a completely different time zone. And it's going to matter for your grade. When you're paying thousands and thousands of dollars for a class, you'll be glad that you've done this. And thirdly, the internet is a tool that is only as good as a person handling it. So I want to maximize the quality potential of this tool together. So the best place to begin, I think, is with some general rule of thumbs to keep in mind for good discussion board posts. First, make sure that you're answering the prompt directly. If the prompt is asking you to do something, make sure that you do it and make sure that you're mindful of command terms like explain, describe. Make sure that you look at those words and that you are executing it in your responses. Secondly, be detailed and concise. Make sure that you answer the prompt uniquely. I'm interested in what you have to say, and so are your classmates. What are your original thoughts? Make sure that your prompt respects your original take on the situation. So if you say that I agree, make sure that your supporting evidence is from an agreeable standpoint. Don't contradict yourself. Thirdly, bring something unique to the post. Just saying I agree or I disagree isn't enough. Tell me your why. Why do you feel this way? Fourth, answer the prompt and respond to classmates respectfully. It is important that we disagree in this space that's academically healthy, but make sure that we're disagreeing without being disagreeable. And let's lastly make sure that we always use academically appropriate language. This may be the internet, but it's not Facebook, it's not Instagram, and it's not your Snapchat. Make sure that you're academically appropriate at all times. So on your screen now, you see a discussion question example. This is a two-part, two due date assignment. It's a tongue twister right there. Part 1 is due September 9th, and Part 2 is due September 14th. And you'll see that on your screen right here. Part 1, respond by September 9th. Part 2, respond by September 14th. Now, as you can see, this is This is a multiple question discussion board. So the first question asks you, what, in your view, is the purpose of education? 2, to what extent do you believe the purpose is being met at LMS? And 3, what are the barriers to more fully meeting that purpose? And then it also says, although this is based on your own perspective, you must provide some depth in your support of your response. Now, what we see here is a 3-part question. You're first asked to explain your opinion. What's your view on the purpose of education? Then you're asked to analyze whether or not it's being met at, or that standard or that purpose is being met at Lionville Middle School. And then the third part, you're asked to evaluate whether or not there are barriers, and if so, kind of be descriptive of what those barriers are. And while this is an opinion-based discussion board post, you must provide some depth to your response. meaning explain your answer, tell me why. The second part requires that you respond to at least 2 of your peers. With any discussion board thread, I am likely going to ask you to provide 1 to 2 responses to your peers. When it is a 2-part response, the goal is that you respond to one person who generally agrees with your perspective and one that offers a differing view. These responses should also be well considered. I agree or I disagree are fine ways to start your response, but you need to elaborate. So here on the next page is an example response. Now, again, this is a little bit higher level, but it is a great example. The example states, and this is the response to part 1, there's that 3-part question. And as you can see, it's a 3-part question. So my response is in kind of like segmented into 3 different portions. In my view, the purpose of education is to create a nation of lifelong learners and thinkers who will be the next generation of leaders and active participants in society. In my opinion, the purpose is met with overwhelming success at Lionville Middle School. Students are encouraged to take risks, think critically, challenge themselves, and reflect through application and problem solving in order to foster deeper understanding and individual growth. Additionally, students are actively invested in relevant and intentional instructional experiences that inspire them to apply and expand their learning. Some barriers I see, I'm sure you guys do too, are high stakes testing, placing undue pressure on our young learners, scaring some to the point of either shutdown or anxiety attacks. I would like to see politicians put education first by placing an emphasis on treating schools like the vital learning communities they are. That is a 3-part response to a 3-part question. Now again, I'm not done. That response that I just provided to you is due on September 9th. That doesn't mean I'm completely done with the assignment. I still have to respond to 2 peers by September 14th. And again, when I'm responding to those 2 peers, I must respond to one that agrees with my perspective, and I must reply to someone who doesn't necessarily agree with my perspective. And I must do it in a respectful way, and I must elaborate. So here's an example response. David, I think that you hit the nail on the head when noting that part of the purpose of education is to benefit society. I would therefore push back and suggest that there is a need to gauge performance and prepare students for their future. The tempting statistics to cite would be that the test scores at Lionville Middle School are above the state average, suggesting that most students are performing above grade level. We are able to maintain this level of excellence by providing an organic learning environment which encourages creativity and diversity. The unfortunate reality is that we do need internal and external assessments to measure student success. If not standardized tests, then how? So as you can tell, or hopefully you can tell, this is a post in which I disagree with David. I disagree with his standpoint that that standardized tests are placing this undue, unnecessary pressure on students because it's necessary in order to measure student achievement and student success. So this is an example of me disagreeing with somebody else. I did make note of something I agreed with, but I also said I don't agree with this, and then I posed another question. If not this, then what else? So that would be an above average excellent post that I would like to see from all of you. Again, I just want to reiterate the keys to a good discussion board post. Make sure you read the directions, be detailed and concise, bring something unique to the post, answer the prompt and respond to classmates respectfully, and use academically appropriate language. I know it's not on here, but I think it's really important to note. Make sure that you adhere to deadlines. If it says it's due September 9th at 11:59 p.m., make sure that it's submitted before then, and don't wait to the last minute. This last bit is just kind of going over what the rubric says. I'm only going to emphasize the dark blue portion that you see on your screen, mainly because that's the goal today, or that's a goal for any discussion board moving forward. You're graded on 4 different aspects. And now the rubric will change slightly based on what the discussion thread is. Now there will be a digital discussion board for each thread in Schoology. And they might change just a little bit because you might not necessarily be going based off of a text. You might just be going based off opinions, based on something, a class discussion. But this is pretty much exactly how it's going to look every time, just with slight changes. Part 1, or the first criteria that needs to be met, is peer participation. As we discussed, you need to provide 2 peer responses, one that elicits a response. And when I say elicit, it means it encourages other classmates to respond to your response, if that makes sense. Kind of like this flowing conversation that provides new thought and builds on one another. 2 is critical thinking and independent thinking. I want you to integrate new thoughts but also demonstrate that you understand the central concept. So for this example, the central concept was the purpose of education. Is it being met at Lineville Middle School, and what are the barriers? So I want you to be able to identify those primary arguments and then be able to speak to those things based on your own opinion. And if you were able to find statistics or information out there, like I mentioned, that the testing scores were above the state average, that's also great to add. 3, evidence-based statements. Now, that's something where if you're going to find something online, you're going to pull specific evidence from the text or online that you are able to cite. In this case, you would get a 10 out of 10 simply by just saying and providing evidence or examples, explaining your answer. And lastly is writing style. Evidence, scholarly quality, meaning you include paragraph transitions, it's an appropriate tone, there's a range in sentence structure, the correct use of punctuation and capitalization, and appropriate use of grammar. I know, and even for me, it is difficult at times because we are so attached to our devices. It's hard to get out of that text lingo, using things like IDK, or, abbreviating things in a text manner. When we are in a discussion board forum, you are to be using appropriate school language. You are going to be acting as though you are writing an essay for English class. While it's not an essay, it is equally as important to pay attention to your writing style, using appropriate grammar, and using the appropriate sentence structure, and making sure you capitalize your words. Now, I know this was a lot to take in, but the reason why we recorded it is so that you can always refer back to this if you have questions. Obviously, if you need assistance or help along the way, you have me as a resource. I wish you the best of luck in your first discussion board posts, and I can't wait to see what you guys have to offer.